They used to call him the scariest man in MMA, the Pitbull, a name that once made even the toughest of heavyweights hesitate. Back in the mid-2000s, Andrei Arlovski was a wrecking machine, overhands like hammers, speed like a middleweight, and style like a Bond villain. And then, well, he got knocked out, again and again and again. And suddenly, fans weren't watching him to see who he would destroy next, they were watching to see how fast he would fall. From UFC champion to meme. But he didn't quit. He kept fighting, reinventing, surviving. This is the story of a man who refused to be forgotten. A man who lost everything except the will to fight. This is Andrei Arlovski's journey. He was born in Babruysk, Belarus back when it was still part of the crumbling Soviet Union. That alone meant that life wasn't going to be easy. As a teenager, Arlovski was skinny, shy, and constantly bullied. Not exactly what you would expect from a future cage fighter. But at age 14, he had had enough. He started lifting weights, not for sports, but for survival. By 16, he was diving headfirst into sambo, judo, and kickboxing. Combat wasn't a hobby, it was his escape, a way to turn pain into purpose. Arlovski then trained at the police academy in Minsk, where sambo was part of the curriculum, and he dominated the field there. Soon he was taking silver at the Sambo World Cup and the World Sambo Championship. He became the first Belarusian to earn the title International Master of Sports. Not bad for a kid who once got his lunch money taken. In 1999, at just 20, he made his MMA debut in Russia. Now, it didn't go well. A wild brawler named Vyashchylev Datsik knocked him out cold. And it should have been a wake-up call, but instead, it was rocket fuel. By 2000, he was already winning tournaments. He knocked out Roman Zentsov and submitted Michael Tilroy on the same night to win the M1 European Championship. But he didn't want to win just in Russia, he wanted the world. So he packed his bags, crossed the ocean, and landed in Chicago, speaking almost no English, broke, but hungry. He joined Pat Militich's camp, surrounded by killers like Matt Hughes and Tim Sylvia. It was a sink or swim environment. Arlovski chose to swim and bite. His UFC debut came in 2000 at UFC 28. He submitted Aaron Brink in under a minute. The Pitbull had arrived. For the next few years, he bounced between wins and losses, learning on the job. He got wrecked by Rico Rodriguez and Pedro Hizo. But the upside, every time he lost, he evolved. Then came the run. Wins over Ian Freeman, Vladimir Matoshenko, and Wesley Cabbage Correa made people take notice. He wasn't just a brawler anymore, he had timing, footwork, and speed that felt illegal for a heavyweight. In 2005, Frank Mir got sidelined by a motorcycle accident, so the UFC crowned an interim champ. Arlovski stepped in against Tim Sylvia at UFC 51. 47 seconds, that is all it took. One overhand right, one Achilles lock, one championship belt. And just like that, Arlovski was the new heavyweight king. He defended it against Justin Eilers at UFC 53. The guy walked out of the fight with 2 broken hands, a busted nose, and a shredded ACL. Next up was Paul Buentello. That one lasted 15 seconds. One punch, lights out. Arlovski had officially turned the heavyweight division into a horror movie. And the best part was, he didn't gloat. He had this quiet, cold confidence, like a man who didn't need to talk. His fists were fluent in every language. By late 2005, he was no longer just a champion, he was the most feared man in the UFC. And then came Mirko Cro Cop. Well, almost. They were both supposed to be on a collision course, the best striker in Pride versus the scariest man in the UFC. That dream never materialized in the octagon, but in terms of reputation, Arlovski beat him to the punch. Even without Cro Cop, Arlovski was untouchable. Fans feared him, fighters avoided him. Dana White called him the most dangerous heavyweight on the planet. But legends are never safe for long, and the cracks were coming. The beginning of the end came at UFC 59. Arlovski stepped into the octagon to defend his title in a rematch against Tim Sylvia, the same guy he destroyed in under a minute just months earlier. And for a few seconds, it looked like history would repeat itself. Arlovski dropped Sylvia with a right hand almost instantly, but instead of finishing the job, he got greedy. He rushed in wild. Sylvia stood up, threw a short uppercut, and cracked Arlovski's jaw. The Pitbull collapsed. Sylvia pounced. Herb Dean waved it off. In just 2 minutes and 43 seconds, the champion was dethroned. They ran it back again at UFC 61, but the magic was gone. Arlovski looked hesitant. Injured mid-fight by a checked kick, he couldn't throw with any confidence, and it showed. 5 slow rounds. Sylvia won by decision. Arlovski refused to talk about the injury afterward, saying only, "I don't want to make excuses." But the aura he had was gone. He beat Marcio Cruz and Fabricio Verdum after that, sure, but he was fighting safe. The explosive striker had been replaced by a cautious technician. Even when he knocked out Jake O'Brien at UFC 82, fans could sense the fear behind the power. Then came Affliction, a new promotion, big paydays, big opportunities. It seemed like a fresh start. He knocked out Ben Rothwell. Then he beat Roy Nelson. Suddenly, the old Arlovski was back. They gave him Fedor Emelianenko in January 2009. This was it. 2 elite Eastern European killers. Everyone expected violence. And they got it. Just not the kind that Arlovski hoped for. Midway through the first round, Arlovski started getting confident. He had Fedor backing up. Then, in a flash of cockiness, he jumped in with a flying knee. Fedor countered with a right hand from hell. Arlovski dropped like a marionette with the strings cut. The lights went out. The Pitbull's soul left the cage that night, and so did the last of his invincibility. The Fedor loss was brutal, but what followed was worse. He signed with Strikeforce. His first opponent was Brett Rogers. That fight lasted only 22 seconds. 1 punch, out cold. Then it was Antonio Bigfoot Silva, another loss. Then Sergey Kartanov, another knockout. 3 straight defeats, 2 of them violent knockouts. Arlovski's chin was now a punchline, literally. YouTube filled with compilations. Twitter roasted him. Comment sections were ruthless. He wasn't a former champ anymore. He was that guy who keeps getting knocked out. The Pitbull had become a meme. And it wasn't just the fans. Coaches started having hard conversations with him. Some said that he should walk away. Even Greg Jackson, one of the smartest minds in MMA, had doubts. Even Bleacher Report published an article titled Andrei Arlovski and the Top 10 Most Questionable Chins in MMA History. But Arlovski didn't care. He posted a video in 2011 talking directly to fans, over an hour long. He looked serious, maybe even scared. But one thing was clear, he wasn't retiring. He joined Jackson Wink full-time. He trained with John Jones, Travis Brown, and Carlos Condit. He wasn't there to play sparring partner, he was there to reinvent himself. In 2011, he beat Ray Lopez and then Travis Fulton, the guy with over 300 fights, by head kick knockout. Fulton told Arlovski backstage it was the hardest he had ever been hit. Ever. Then came ONE FC. He fought Tim Sylvia for a 4th time. Dropped him, went in for the finish, landed illegal soccer kicks, no contest. A win that wasn't really a win. Then World of Series fighting, more comeback attempts. He beat Devin Cole, lost to Anthony Johnson, beat Mike Kyle. Every win kept him relevant. Every loss reminded people of the ghost that he was chasing. But still, he fought, because that is all he knew. Then the unthinkable happened. In 2014, Dana White re-signed him to the UFC. Now, nobody saw that coming. Most people thought it was a retirement tour, a nostalgia act. His return fight was against Brendan Schaub. It was an ugly split decision win. Fans were not impressed. Next came Antonio Silva, a rematch from the Strikeforce days. Arlovski was a heavy underdog. He starched Bigfoot in under 3 minutes. Clean right hand, walk-off KO, performance of the night. Suddenly, fans started paying attention again. Then came Travis Brown, UFC 187, one of the greatest one-round fights in MMA history. Both guys got dropped. Both were nearly finished, but Arlovski wouldn't go away. He stopped Brown in the first round. Fans lost their minds. Joe Rogan said that Arlovski almost pulled out due to a calf injury. He didn't, and that earned him fight of the night. Next was Frank Mir, another legend, another win. 3 straight wins, 2 bonuses, and a top 5 ranking.
What a comeback you have made inside this octagon. Why are you shaking your head?
I'm disappointed, and I didn't accept that Frank will go hard 3 rounds on me. So that's why I'm disappointed.
So you're disappointed that the fight went 3 rounds because you were trying to knock Frank Mir out? Is that what you're saying?
The Pitbull was back in the hunt. He faced Stipe Miocic in a title eliminator in early 2016, but reality returned. Stipe knocked him out in under a minute. Then Alistair Overeem, another TKO loss. Then Josh Barnett, submission. Then Francis Ngannou, first round finish. The knockout streak returned. But this time, nobody laughed, because Arlovski didn't quit. He moved to American Top Team. He adjusted his game. Less brawling, more footwork, more clinch control, more decisions. He beat Junior Albini, then Stefan Struve, then Chase Sherman, then Jared Vandera, then Carlos Felipe, then Jake Collier. Not flashy, not viral, but smart, tough, gritty wins. Joe Rogan said,
Who takes a licking and keeps on ticking better than Andrei Arlovski?
Tell me about it.
That dude's still around. He was the UFC champion in 2005, son.
Wow, dude.
2005, that's 20 years ago of hardcore combat sports in MMA. That is nuts.
Dude, remember how hard it was for the UFC even to cut him because they kept giving these young lions, he kept beating them.
Yeah.
And he wasn't fighting for belts anymore. He was fighting for respect and earning every bit of it. Now let's look at the numbers. 60 fights, 34 wins, 24 losses. Out of the 34 wins, 17 came by knockout, 3 by submission. He had over 2 decades in the fight game. He holds the record for most wins in UFC heavyweight history, 23. Most fights in UFC heavyweight history, 42. Most significant strikes landed in UFC heavyweight history, 1,585. Third most fights in Zuffa history, behind only Jim Miller and Donald Cerrone.
To me, is another pioneer of the sport for different reasons, a trailblazer. As I said at the top of the show, most fights in UFC heavyweight history, 42. Most wins in UFC heavyweight history, 23. Third most finishes in UFC heavyweight history, 11. Total UFC fight time, 6 hours and 49 minutes, 58 seconds, most in heavyweight history. Number 1, most significant strikes landed in heavyweight history, 1585. Total heavyweight strikes landed. Number 1, 1907. Second most fights in UFC history with 42, one behind Jim Miller, 43. Second most wins with 23. Number 1, 26, Jim Miller. Only Jim Miller, Clay Guida, Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar, and RDA have spent more time in the octagon than one Andrei Arlovski, the Pitbull.
And he's not done yet. Even at 46, Arlovski fought twice in 2024. He stepped into the octagon against younger, faster, hungrier men and still went the distance. No shortcuts, no fear. His final fight came at UFC 303 against Martin Buday. He lost by a split decision, but 7 of 12 media outlets scored it for Arlovski. Fans gave him a standing ovation. The following day, he confirmed what many had suspected. His UFC run was over. But retirement was just not in the books. Not yet, at least. In March of 2025, he made his boxing debut under Dirty Boxing Championship against Terrence Hodges. He won by TKO in round 2, his first combat sports finish in a decade. And later this year, he's reportedly scheduled to fight in Bare Knuckle FC. Yeah, you heard that right. This man refuses to fade. But here's the thing, Arlovski's legacy isn't just about numbers or belts or highlight reels, it's about survival. There are two versions of Arlovski out there. One is the meme, knockout compilations, internet jokes, gifs of him collapsing after a big right hand. The other is the monster, the young Pitbull who tore through giants, stood atop the UFC, and made people afraid to blink when he was fighting. Both are real, but neither tells the whole story, because what truly defines Arlovski is what happened in between. He didn't just win or lose, he lasted. Now, science tells us that a fighter's chin fades. You take too many hits and the lights go out easier each time. The brain becomes more fragile. Arlovski lived that. You could see it in his losses, the way he dropped from shots that wouldn't have touched him 5 years earlier. But here's what's crazy. He adjusted. He didn't just survive, he changed. He fought smarter, used angles, avoided danger. He found a way to keep competing when his body no longer had the same tools. It wasn't pretty, but it was real. And in a sport like MMA, real beats perfect every time. So where does that leave Arlovski? He's a former champion, a lesson for the younger fighters, a redemption story, a meme, a legend, all at once. The Pitbull didn't just fight in 4 different decades, he adapted through each one. He trained with champions, fought in multiple organizations, took beatings, took belts, lost fans, gained new ones. And through it all, he never quit. That is what makes him different. Not the titles, not the stats, but the heart. The stubborn, defiant, beat-up heart of a man who refused to be forgotten. And that is the story of Andrei Arlovski, a man who went from feared champion to online meme and then somehow, against all odds, fought his way back to respect. Now, if you made it this far, thanks for sticking around. Let us know in the comments what's your favorite Arlovski moment. And do you think that he belongs in the Hall of Fame?